Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of That Early Childhood Nerd. I'm Heather Burnt-Santy, super excited to be back with you all, and also excited about the guests on this show. Today I have Kathy Gallo and Leeann Soucy, who also go by the name Two Pushy Dames, which I loved. Before I even heard you or read you or saw anything, I knew that this was going to be a good thing that I was going to be interested in. So thank you both for being here. Will you each take a minute to tell folks why they should listen to you today?
Yeah, sure, Heather. Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
So we came up with the name, the Two Pushy Dames, because first of all, we're pushy. We are pushy. But
You're more pushy than I am, Leeann.
Yeah, I know that's true. But we started doing the hashtag push back on the push down when we were like posting things on social media, etc. And we started thinking, yeah, we're pushy, we're pushy dames. We want to push back on that push down. So we came up with the name, the Two Pushy Dames. We have worked together for over 30 years now. Whenever Kathy goes to a new job, I basically follow her. But we teach at North Shore Community College, and we also teach at Salem State University. But we work together on our day jobs. We work together. Kathy's my boss, and she likes to let everyone know that.
Nice.
Come on.
Just kidding. But we also dress alike. As you can see, our t-shirts say, these dames have loose parts, because we love loose parts, including our own. As we've gotten up there in age, we have lots of loose parts.
It's the pandemic diet. I think it hit both of us.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
we have bodies for podcast and radio. So that's great. Only Heather can see us.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I'm Kathy
Thanks,
Gallo, and Leeann did a great job there. Just so you know, we're from Massachusetts. I know that people listen from all over. People say we have accents, but we don't notice them.
Little bit.
And we do, our day jobs, but the Pushy Dames work is just when we can really kind of say what we think, and we don't have to think about everything thoughtfully. Or worry about, offending somebody who funded us for something. And with the Pushy Dames, we can just say, this is not good for kids, or this is what's best for kids. And it's freeing as you get to be a little bit older. It's awesome to be able to just freaking say what you want to say.
Exactly. So, that's kind of what I do with the podcast. That's kind of why I keep doing the podcast, because it gives me that outlet. Okay, so we're going to talk about the academic pushdown. We're going to start with a quote that you guys sent me. That's Nancy Carlson Page from her book, Taking Back Childhood, which if you haven't read it, you really, really should. It's amazing. I have the Kindle copy and the library copy, the bookshelf copy. And so I have it with me wherever I am. But here's our quote that we're starting with. The most important competencies in young children can't be tested. Naming letters and numbers is superficial and almost irrelevant in relation to the capacities we want to help children develop. Self-regulation, problem-solving ability, social and emotional competence, imagination, initiative, curiosity, original thinking. These capacities make or break success in school and life, and they can't be reduced to numbers.
Yes.
Amen.
Period. We're done. That's it.
I'm so glad you sent me this, that you chose this quote, because it is time for me to just go back and revisit the book. It's been a little bit since I looked at it. So let me start with, why is this the one that you said, this is the quote I want to guide the conversation on the show?
Yeah, I think that, she's a Boston legend for early childhood. So that's probably one of the reasons why we picked her. I know Kathy, we had her speak last year at something for, our job, but the points that she makes are just so, on target when you think about it. And not to mention, she has an awfully cute son too. So we take that into consideration.
For those of you who don't know, Nancy's son is Matt Damon.
Right.
The Matt Damon.
The Matt Damon. Yeah.
Yeah. And she just tells it like it is. And she's always been one of the pillars that we hold. We use a lot of information from DEY, Defending the Early Years, which Nancy is a huge part of. And I'm sure your listeners know what that is, but it's DEY.org. And there's some great videos and resources and position statements and things like that, that our compass points the same way.
Yeah. Yeah. Lots of good research. It's research based too, right?
Absolutely.
They can give you the rationale for everything they have on their site. which I appreciate. So just in case there's someone out there who doesn't know what we're talking about when we say academic push down, let's start there. What does that mean for people in early childhood?
Well, yeah, it means kindergarten is not the new first grade, nor should it be the new first grade.
Yeah.
Kindergarten should be kindergarten. Kindergarten should have blocks and dramatic play areas that are not only open on Fridays for the 5 kids that behave that week.
Oh, Jesus.
Kindergarten is not the new first grade, and 4-year-olds should be 4 and 3-year-olds should be 3, and we shouldn't be preparing them for kindergarten. We should really prepare them, for other things like getting along and buttoning their zipper and, can you button a zipper? Zipping their pants, putting their own boots on, that kind of thing.
Wiping their butts.
Yep, exactly. And we like to think of it too as, if you look at your life as a ruler, 1 and 2 inches of that ruler are basically your childhood. Why are we pushing kids to move down that ruler so quickly? We want to have childhood be joyful and celebrate it, instead of just keep putting so much anxiety and stress on young kids, to make paper plate turkeys or whatever the heck we have them making, instead of exploring the mediums and having a good time, and like I said, being joyful. That's what childhood should be.
Right. And wondering, is it really relevant that this 3-year-old knows anything about turkeys right now? Like even if that turkey activity was teaching them about turkeys, how is that relevant to their lives at this point? Unless they
what, Heather, I see turkeys walking down my street on a regular basis, and keeping my neighbors trapped in their car and things like that. The real turkeys look nothing like your traced handprint or a paper plate. So that's all that kind of cutesy teacher stuff. We say, if you think, oh, that's cute, it's probably not appropriate for young children.
Absolutely.
It's probably better for 2nd graders, kids who understand that representational kind of thought with art. So.
And we also think, like, when you think about something like calendar, I always think, like, what 3, 4, or 5-year-old are making doctor's appointments, or, writing checks or anything, are they paying bills that they need to know what the date is? I don't think so. Like, why do they need to know the date? Like, they need to know that it's sunny out. They need to know that, they have to wear a jacket today, not, the actual date. It's just all kind of.
Yeah. And we keep saying 3 and 4-year-olds, but it's 2-year-olds. Getting this too. And so if we're talking about people who say kindergarten's the new first grade, well, for crying out loud, being a toddler is the new 4-year-old. Then every inch we give, they take that proverbial mile with moving it further and further down to younger and younger ages. And 2 somehow seems like a magic number. Like now they're 2, so they can learn things and they can start to do group things.
We've seen sadly 2-year-olds with worksheets and the educator actually holding the child's hand with the pencil in it, trying to get them to trace things or draw the lines or do whatever they're supposed to do. And they think it's math, and it's like, no, it's not. And it's not fine. Their hands aren't developed yet. They can't do that yet,
Right. There's a reason you have to hold their hand to do that.
There you go.
Yeah. So why do you think it's so rampant that teachers are early childhood practitioners are engaging in those kinds of daily practices or having those kinds of expectations for children?
Heather, it's funny because we hear early childhood teachers all the time say, but the school system wants them to have this before they go to kindergarten. This city or town says they need to know this, this, and this. And, Kathy actually set up a panel, and we had a panel where there were kindergarten teachers and first grade teachers on it. And we had a whole room full of early childhood professionals, and we said, can you tell them what you expect children to come to school with in kindergarten, first grade? And it was amazing because, of course, they said social skills, emotional skills. And then, one of them said, I don't care if a child can read Harry Potter at 5. I want them to be able to zip their zipper when they come out of the bathroom, because I have 20-something kids, no help. And that's more important right now than that fact that they can read Harry Potter, for us to have a successful day. And it was really nice for the early childhood professionals to hear that. So it wasn't a superintendent saying, here's a list of all the things we want kids to know before they come to kindergarten, or here's a test, let's give them to see if they're ready for kindergarten. It was more teachers saying, no, once they get here, I'll teach them what they need to know. The letters will come, they'll learn how to read eventually, like they're just not ready yet. And so that was eye-opening and also really good for the teachers to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here in Indiana, we have, and I think most states now have their early learning standards that are supposed to align with those school standards. And in Indiana, we have the early learning foundations, which are pretty good as a document compared to some other early learning standards I've seen. But they're very clear. Like in the last column, they're columns, by skill level or whatever, and it's young infant, older infant, young preschool, young toddler, older toddler, young preschool, older preschool, and then kindergarten. And in the very last column are things that, according to written standards that anyone can access on the internet, said should be happening at the end of kindergarten. But what I see in that should be happening by the end of kindergarten are what I see preschool teachers and toddler teachers even sometimes trying to do. Like, if we just introduce them to it earlier, we can speed this whole thing up. And that's not how children develop. And it's not what's important to them at those ages.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And I think that a lot of, your question about that is the way we set things up in this country, particularly, no child left behind. And we say, behind who? Or behind what? Like, nobody's behind. We're in the middle of a freaking pandemic. Nobody's behind. They're fine. Let them just, get through the day. Yeah. Or, race to the top. That was one of our big grants. Race to the top of what? Mm-hmm. Those are the messages we're sending to our educators. Yep. And I think that in the early childhood field, at least here in the Northeast, I'm sure it's nationally we see this, but the early childhood community is not as professional in the eyes of everybody else as the public school teachers are. So I think we think, we should do what they do to be more professionalized and, to be equal with them and to let them know we do a good job with kids. And it takes a lot of confidence and a lot of, rethinking of the way you think to recognize that what I'm doing with these kids at 2 and 3 and 4 in infancy makes a difference when they get there, and they'll be ready when they're ready, not when we think they should be ready.
Yeah. And so I've been in the field for about 30 years, and listeners will have heard a lot of this already.
You look
anyway.
Great, Heather.
Oh, thank you. I'm also 50. Thanks. It's a blessing and a curse. But anyway, now you've thrown me all off. I used to think that the way to get people to think about me as a professional is to make it look like I'm teaching. And that's really what I focused on. And I've finally reached a point where I was like, I don't have to essentially pretend play teaching if I can talk about my rationale for what I do in my classroom. And if I can say every decision I've made is based on, something that I can articulate that's sound. And I feel so much more professional myself since I've made that switch. And it's hard to do, but it's our responsibility to do no harm, right?
Absolutely. And we talk a lot about making learning visible. So, documenting things, showing a picture, saying what the child was learning while they were playing with something. Yeah. I think that validates too, because it just says, look, I know what I'm doing. We are playing, but look at all the skills, we're in all the milestones we're hitting while we're playing. And I think that that's an important message also for families as well as administrators. And we also recognize that sometimes, administrators come from, an elementary background or a middle school or a high school background. So they really don't understand early childhood. And rather than being very teacher directed in the early years, we know you need to be a facilitator more than, like you said, doing that whole teacher talk and, everyone pay attention and everyone quiet. Children aren't meant to be quiet. Can you imagine telling a puppy to sit somewhere for, nope, you sit for 3 hours. You can't do that to a puppy. You can't expect
or an adult
either. There you go. But yeah.
So I wanted to jump back to kindergarten readiness for a minute, because that came up in each of your answers since we've been recording. I think I've finally decided it's not kindergarten readiness even. We call it that, but all we're thinking about is that screening that they do. So we're spending their first 5 years completely making ourselves and them crazy, trying to get them to get through a screening that some school systems might hold as, sort of a gatekeeper to whether you get into kindergarten or not. And that makes even less sense to me now. If I think about it in terms of that, all we're really trying to train them for is a screening that they might get in their school to get into kindergarten.
Yeah, mind you, that screening is going to be probably at a big school they've never been to, with people that they've never met before, and it's an echoey, usually, in the auditorium or the gym or something, or, it's a strange person's office. And how uncomfortable is that? Talk about, putting pressure and anxiety on a kid.
Yeah.
That's huge. We see so many children nowadays with anxiety and stress levels out the roof. And it's wrong. Like I said, it needs to be a joyful time, not a stressful time. They have plenty of time for stress. We know that.
Right. But we'll just train our elementary school teachers how to handle trauma, and that'll be okay. We don't need to look at how we're contributing to trauma in the first 5 years, as long as we have posters on the wall and teachers who can throw it on the curriculum every now and again.
It's so true. I think that one of the ways that's easier to think about this kind of pressure and push down is taking it in the reverse direction. So if you have a brand new infant, you're not going to tell it needs to be potty trained. If you have a 2-year-old, you're not going to make it ride a 2-wheel bicycle or know how, or you wouldn't let your 10-year-old drive your car. But we push this other stuff, and it's usually reading and writing kinds of things, or behavioral, norms or expectations. And when you look at it from that lens, it's kind of funny. If a parent came to you and said, I want my new baby toilet trained, these diapers are so expensive, and what the heck are we waiting for here? We would all say, no, it's physically not okay to do that. It's emotionally not okay to do that. But we do it with the darn pencils, and you got to trace your name and, read, and what's this word? And it's really too much pressure, and it's coming at them for the wrong reasons. And I do think the early childhood community and program directors and owners are in a tough position, because parents, pay a fee for their child to get this high quality early education, and parents don't always know what high quality looks like. They like the stuff that comes in their backpack.
They've been sold a bill of goods that they've come to expect.
Exactly.
Through commercials and toys and parent mommy groups online and things like that. So that was going to be one of my next questions was, so, what do you say to the parents who say, nope, this is what we really expect to see?
I say, when someone has a baby, give them the book, The Importance of Being Little. Yes. I mean, that's just such a nice book to read.
Or Culture of Childhood. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. But the parents, it's hard, but that's why we talk so much to our teachers about, making learning visible and why they're learning what they're learning, and, why it's important to document things. Because if you ask a teacher, why are you letting them play in the mud? They'll tell you why, but you need to explain that to the parents so that the parents know. I think that's an important piece. And, we always say, send home articles to parents. And sometimes teachers will say, oh, they'll just throw them away. And we say, that's okay. They'll throw them away, but they know what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Giving them important research-based information, So I think that's a big key is, I think early childhood teachers need to step up and say, I'm a professional too, and they need to show that. And, I think that's an important piece to recognizing the importance of early childhood.
Which they need to believe themselves to be able to do that. And I think that's another element that becomes a problem. So I'm also a community college teacher and getting ready to be a program chair. Yay. But I was a student, I went back to school in my 40s and started pretty much all over. And I've seen that a lot of the teacher prep programs are focusing really on 3 to 5 year olds from 9 to 11 in the morning, and may give lip service to whole child development and developmentally appropriate practices. But what I've seen fits more with the academic push down, it seems like sometimes.
Yeah, I think that everybody feels that pressure. Our day jobs are in a community college, and we also teach at the local university. So we see the students coming in. We mostly work with adult learners. So the people who are working in the field coming in, we don't typically have the 19-year-olds coming from high school. So we have the adults coming in, and it's really hard for them to make that shift. And I think it speaks to what you said earlier, Heather. You feel like you need to be a teacher.
Yeah.
And that means you need to be the one up there doing that stuff. And I'm pretty sure it was Lisa Murphy who said, teachers need to be facilitators, not instigators.
Yes.
And
that
I
sounds
love
like
that.
Lisa.
Yeah, I
love her.
Lisa, who, I think that makes a whole lot of sense to think about it that way. Your job is not to just shove a bunch of information into a little brain that they're not ready for yet. It's about helping them open up their minds and their brains and their hands and their fingers to be able to really explore the medium. But luckily at our school, we are NACE accredited for higher ed and really focus on best practice. But even within that, everybody has their own idea of what that might look like a little bit. And sometimes we have to reboot and re-energize and think a little bit harder about it. So
and also too, Kathy often mentions, when we look at students, their schedules, and Kathy always says, if it says learning time, get that out of there, because all day you're learning, I mean, Kathy can speak to that, but it's so true. Many times you look at people's schedules and it says, free time, learning time. And you're just like, what? No.
Sometimes it even says academics. And then I just want to puke and say, what? You're in a family childcare home. These kids don't need academics. Is that pressure, that teacher pressure?
Exactly.
It really is.
And I think a lot of what you talked about a minute ago brings up the age-old dilemma of compensation. How do you feel and act like a professional and believe that you're a professional if you get paid, a wage where you need a second job or a third job? I mean, this is our second job, so it never ends. But our field is sorely underpaid and undervalued out in the real world. So.
Kathy, will you share your joke?
Why joke?
Why did the preschool teacher cross the road?
I don't know.
To get to her second job.
No one tells jokes like that anymore with the setup and the punchline.
Heather. How much time?
Awesome. Great. That'll be a whole other episode. We'll just do Kathy jokes.
Exactly.
So I want to ask now, we've sort of established why we don't like the push down. So let's talk now about what people can do if they feel stuck in that. How do they move out of it now if we've convinced them that this isn't how it should be? What do we say next?
That's a really tough question,
I know.
Heather, because we do a lot of training and we see a lot of educators who come back thirsty and hungry and they drink the Pushy Dames punch and they're ready to roll. And then they say, my co-teacher won't go along with this, or my director said the parents want this, or we can't do it that way. And sometimes we have these wonderful epiphanies. In fact, somebody last night said, my director had an epiphany, and Leeann and I were just like, oh, awesome.
The elusive director epiphany.
Yeah. And I don't know if there's a right answer to that question, but I think we have to come at it from every angle. So I think we need to come at it from a federal government perspective and a national perspective, that we're not racing to the top of anything right now. We're trying to help kids be able to learn and be okay and be comfortable in their skin. And we need to come at it that we really highly educate public school administrators, because I don't know the data, but I know it's a very small percentage of superintendents and principals that have early childhood education experience. It's a very small percentage. So I think we need to flip that data point a little bit and build leaders in the public school system. And I think we need to empower directors to make good decisions and not decisions that they worry about. That parent might be mad at me if they don't get a leprechaun man to hang on their fridge, to really be able to speak the early childhood Bible. And then finally, I think we really need to market to parents. And I think the parents, they're the, the purchasers of this service and our workforce. I think we really need to get them to say, no, I don't want this stuff. I want my child to do this stuff. I think we really need to combat it from a whole bunch of different lenses.
Yeah, I thought for a long time that the families are the biggest place we can have an influence right now. If we can change what they're shopping for, then that will have a broad ripple effect.
Yeah, and moving forward too, with all the changes with funding that's coming down the line, I really, really, really hope that they have the right people in place making decisions and, making suggestions as to what happens when the funding does come down the line, and it's not academic, based, it's tough.
Yeah. I think people are very nervous about that right now. I think family childcare especially is very nervous about that. We just did an episode a few days ago about universal pre-K essentially, and the fact that in his address to Congress, President Joe Biden said, school, not daycare. Like he made a real point of saying that, and that scared some people. So I hope that was sort of just a habitual slip and not a policy indicator.
Right.
Maybe we need to have a little pillow talk with Jill, Dr. Jill, because she's a community college instructor. Maybe we can get Jill to say, Joe, it's early education and care. Daycare is not the right term. School is not the right term. Right. We just need to get the right people around him.
Exactly. Yeah. And I hope that we can do that. So was there anything else that you really wanted to talk about or say as you were thinking about joining me today?
I don't think so. It's been a pleasure so far.
Yeah. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, you know what? We were podcasting for a while and we stopped with the pandemic because it just seemed like, oh, geez, people have so much going on. But this is inspiring. And I've listened to a lot of your things, certainly. I know we both have. But I think it's time for us to really kind of ramp things up as a field and say, we're here for you. And, we support what you do and kind of, screw the Common Core and get back down on the floor and do what needs to be done.
What a great rhyme. I don't know if that was intentional, but that was a great rhyme. Screw the Common Core and get back down on the floor.
Yeah, there's a learning opportunity, right?
Yeah.
But it's frightening when I think about the society that we're headed towards. And with the past 14 months or so, all the kids on screens. I mean, screens are not something we want little ones to be utilizing. And all the parents on phones. I know Leeann did something with her class once about the still face experiment. And we realized parents are doing that all the time to their infants because they're looking at their phones, and it's really frightening to think about where we are right now, because I think we have an opportunity to do some awesome stuff. And I'm afraid we might be, and I believe data is important, but we need the right data and we need to collect data in the right way. We're in a state where there's a great emphasis on early childhood education. We're one of a couple of states that actually have a state department of early education. So we have the higher ed, elementary and secondary ed, and then we have an early childhood education department, which is pretty unique in the United States, and great emphasis and a lot of support. But it's all about data and numbers. And the easiest way to get that is using some sort of prescribed, standardized, tested curricula, which scares us because we think kids should be in the mud.
Yeah, the only way to get sort of funding and support to do the studies that we're going to get that data from is to appeal to what people are currently interested in, and play is not that thing right now. So it's hard to find good data about the value of play and childhood, because that's not where the academic value is right now. So that's what scares me.
That's why we all need to keep pushing, I think.
Research-based and evidence-based. Yay, this was great. Thank you both so much. I hope you'll come on again sometime.
We'd love it.
So if people want to find out more about you or read about you or whatever, how do they do that? Where do they find you?
Good, Kath.
You can go, Leeann.
So we are at twopushydames.com, and we have a Facebook page. We're on Instagram, and we're on Twitter too, but not as much. But yeah, we have some podcasts, some videos on there. So we heard recently someone's director used a couple of our videos for their staff meeting, and we were like, oh, awesome. It's so nice to hear that, because people are sending that message.
I used a podcast of yours.
What's that?
I used a podcast of yours with one of my classes that I was teaching a year or so ago. I think it was about behavior charts.
If you want to know how to get free stuff from Home Depot or get some good early childhood stuff from the dollar store that's not in the teacher aisle, we've got some very self-deprecating videos. One take and that's it. One take, we're done.
We're all about free stuff and inexpensive things and just the joy of childhood.
I agree. I think that word's the important one, because schools are becoming joyless. Kids don't want to do those things anymore. So, but find us. We'd love to see and hear from folks. And thank you, Heather.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks again for being here. Thanks everybody for listening to another episode. I hope you'll come back next week, and we'll see you all later. Oh, wait.